Frank and Brenda were in their early 20s when they tied the knot. They had acted impulsively, but for great love. Brenda liked to think to herself. After living soul to soul for 7 years, they were hit with inquiries from every angle. When are you going to have kids? Frank was laughing and joking at this point, but his wife was not amused. At this point, she was getting grim. Over the past 6 months, Frank had increasingly turned to alcohol due to persistent work-related issues. Brenda already saw something unhealthy in it. Instead of engaging in their usual evening conversations, her husband was frequently choosing the company of alcohol over his favorite companion. Frank didn't think it was a problem. He had earned the right to rest after a hard day's work. Each one evening with an hour and a half to go. Brenda, absorbed in an email, suddenly remembered that today was the last day to hold her order, and she had to pick it up in time. She let out a disappointed groan as she imagined her sister's possible anger if the needlework materials were not received on time. Her sister asked Brenda to go get the materials while she was stuck at work. Quickly dialing her husband's number, she asked him to come to the specified location and pick up the delivery. But when he picked up the phone, she instantly found his tone unsettling. "Are you drunk?" she inquired. In the background, music and male voices resonated. "Come on, we're just getting started." Frank grinned. Brenda paused for a moment to calm down and only then answered, deciding not to break into a shout. As vacations to the Craig dates, they had agreed this morning that he would pick her up tonight, but it was evident from his current state that he had completely forgotten. Complete maintaining her composure, she asked her spouse, "Could you arrange for a cab to pick up the order now?" "It's the last day. The post office is about to close, and I'm still at work." "Listen, Brenda, I can't talk right now. I'm with the guys and I don't have time for this," her husband hastily replied. "I'll see you at home. Don't miss me." Brenda stared at the darkened phone screen for a moment, gradually tightening her grip on it. What's the use of having a husband if you have to handle all the problems by yourself? Why does a husband who casually prioritizes entertainment and friends seem more important? Several months had elapsed since that incident, yet Frank seemed to have completely forgotten about it. Brenda began to communicate with him, less for some time, but he didn't interpret it negatively. On a particular day, the man returned home later than usual, only to find his spouse absent. She hadn't informed him about being delayed at work. He's concerned. Frank waited for her and grew increasingly worried. Eventually, he decided to call her, but she consistently ignored his calls. He opted to check the map on the app to determine her location. First, the wife, inherently anxious, had previously granted her husband access to her location as a precautionary measure. Fortunately, no emergencies had arisen, but it was comforting. Launching the correct app, the man fixed his gaze on the map, anticipating the beacon to illuminate. To his astonishment, there was no geolocation displayed on the map. It seemed his wife had deactivated the feature. Brenda eventually returned home an hour or two later, unaware that her husband had been on edge, having received no communication from her during that time. "Brenda, what's going on? Where have you been?" the husband blurted out, catching up with her in the hallway, his expression a mix of concern and frustration. The woman met his gaze with her indifferent look, casually remarking, "Just finishing up a project." The husband was not satisfied with this one-word answer. Anticipating an explanation for her lack of communication, he inquired with frustration, "Did you disable geolocation?" His voice carried an angry undertone. She responded sharply, "I'm not overly concerned about my safety anymore, and I've grown accustomed to dealing with things on my own. So that function is history. Forget about it." It dawned on Frank that his wife was indeed hurt by the fact that he hadn't come to her aid in the situation. Brenda had always been sensitive. At Sicaires and the early stages of their relationship, she once took offense at one of his texts and didn't speak to him for a few days while he was away. It seems like that's what took place this time. The resentment lingered. The man decided that it was necessary just to placate his beloved and give her more of his attention so that their relationship thawed again. Starting from that day, he made a conscious effort to arrive home punctually, refraining from touching the bottle for an entire week. A few times, he brought his wife her favorite flowers, although she seemed indifferent to the gesture. Even when he suggested a dinner at a restaurant, she responded by citing a demanding work project, claiming she had no time to spare. One evening, Frank thought Brenda was going to be late at work again, so he was in no hurry to get home. He had scheduled a meeting with an old friend at their beloved pub nearby, intending to enjoy a few drinks before a stroll home. The weather was delightful. It's as soon as they see a more promising option for themselves, they immediately run away. And no matter how hard you try to glue the relationship, it's all useless. It's verified. Frank endeavored to uplift his conversational partner's spirits, but the effort fell short. Lost in less than pleasant contemplations, the man returned home. Passing by a neighboring house, he noticed an upscale foreign car parked near the playground. Soon after, a woman wearing a familiar coat emerged from the vehicle. Undoubtedly, it was Brenda, his wife. Frank called out to her from a distance and hurried in her direction. Startled by the unexpected sound, the woman clutched her heart and the car swiftly vanished from view. "Who drove you?" The husband's agitation was palpable. Brenda met his gaze without a blink. "It's just a cab." "You startled me," she replied icily, making her way towards the right entrance. The husband was angry. His gut told him that his wife was brazenly lying to his face. Several days later, Frank opted to visit his wife's office in the late afternoon, uncertain about what he hoped to discover. But he had been grappling with anxiety for the past few days, disrupting his sleep. He was standing in the parking lot outside the building, immersed in his gloomy thoughts. And upon hearing the distinctive clack of heels, he glanced up to witness his wife strolling alongside a man in a business suit. His mind raced. and that's her boss. Then they got into the car. Frank fixed his gaze on the vehicle, realizing it was the same foreign car he had observed near their house. Everything became clear. When the boss's car pulled away, Frank didn't move. It was useless to pursue them, to follow them. It would only inflict pain upon himself. The husband returned home, seeking solace in the embrace of a bottle of liquor. He began packing his wife's belongings into bags. Right upon her return, all her possessions awaited her in the hallway. She did not immediately realize what had happened and went into the apartment in search of her husband. There he sat at the table, consecutively consuming one drink after another. On the verge of making a cutting remark about his addiction, she was promptly silenced by a loud insult from him. A woman becomes a cheater when she is in the boss's car, he shouted. Brenda grasped the reason behind her husband's sudden binge and the sight of numerous packages in the hallway. She made no attempt to feign ignorance of his words. On the contrary, she said that it was her husband's own fault that she had found a replacement for him. But, unlike Frank, he maintained self-discipline, had no vices, and generally devoted more attention to her than her spouse did. Frank found the audacious comparison unbearable. He demanded that the disloyal wife leave his apartment promptly, otherwise he was not responsible for himself. Brenda gazed at him with fear, tempted to remind him that the apartment was shared, but she refrained. Frank looked really aggressive. Swiftly, the woman gathered all the bags of belongings and departed. A couple went through a divorce, and the ex-wife relocated to live with her boss. Naturally, she had to resign from her previous job to prevent any unwarranted rumors among colleagues, although she didn't seem to mind. She opted to take a temporary break from everything. The new partner gave her such an opportunity. A couple of years later, they got married. Although Brenda's ex-spouse learned that she was content in her new union, he also heard from acquaintances that the new husband continued to have affairs with women who were his subordinates. This seemed to be his area of weakness. Brenda either didn't notice or didn't want to notice the cheating on the part of the new husband. It must not have been easy to admit to herself that she herself was in the shoes of someone who was being cheated on. Now the next story. At the age of 33, Jason, who had successfully established a business and achieved financial stability, suddenly realized that he was lonely. Actually, he built his business from the ground up and struggled to keep it afloat. When everything finally became more or less stable, he endeavored to pursue a romantic relationship, only to encounter disappointment. Jason was upset by mercantile females who just wanted his money and others who did not meet his expectations. As despair set in, he sought solace in alcohol, frequenting bars and clubs. In such a nightclub, he unexpectedly met his future wife. Victoria, a regular attendee of such establishments. Jason lost his mind at just catching sight of a stunning young lady. That evening, he managed to obtain her phone number. Subsequent events unfolded swiftly, a courtship, dates, and lavish gifts. Just 3 months into the relationship, a tearful and apprehensive Victoria revealed to her partner the news of a positive pregnancy test. She was worried about the man's response, a man she didn't know sufficiently. However, a jubilant Jason lifted her into his arms and spun her around in a joyful dance. He decided that this was his moment to create a family, and he was ready for it for a long time. The unanticipated pregnancy marked the commencement of Victoria and Jason's shared life. The mother did not approve of her son's choice. According to her, Jason should have selected a life partner who was a suitable match for him, an educated woman from a respectable family. Victoria, although slightly above average in education, fell short of her expectations. Regardless of whom you decide to marry, you'll bear the consequences. She hissed through the phone, attempting to impart some reason to her son. Silently weathering his mother's criticisms, Jason steadfastly supported his wife. He refused to be provoked and remained firmly by her side. A year after their wedding and the arrival of their grandson, the elderly woman severed all ties with her son's family. Instead of feeling disheartened by the situation, Victoria found solace in the devotion of her husband. That with each passing day, she became increasingly assured of his love for her. Separation from his mother had been a difficult experience, but Jason was willing to compromise for the sake of his beloved. He finally had everything that his friends had, whom he used to be very jealous of. Jason took pride in his thriving business, his gorgeous wife, and their beautiful baby. He was happy to present his wife to his business associates and bring her along to all the occasions in which he participated. He showed his love to the world, and everything appeared totally natural. Jason outfitted her in the most exquisite clothes, showing no mercy in his spending. When Victoria pouted her lips and said, "I have nothing to wear," the hand of her husband appeared in front of her, holding out a bank card. In response, her beloved smiled and said, "Honey, you spoil me." But Victoria was pampered not only by her hotly loved husband, but also by her lover. They met with enviable regularity. The woman stated she was going to the gym and home to tone her body. She grabbed a cab, left her off at the fitness facility, and then got into another car to go meet her lover. Jason, captivated by his love for his spouse, remained oblivious to these actions. In his eyes, Victoria appeared to be an innocent angel he was fortunate to encounter on his journey. The man was confident that she would never betray or deceive him, placing complete trust in his beloved. The first inkling that something was amiss arose when he unexpectedly discovered a highly expensive bracelet on his wife's slender wrist, a gift Jason himself hadn't purchased. "Where did that come from?" he asked in surprise. For a brief moment, panic flickered across Victoria's face, but she quickly replaced it with a charming smile as she gently withdrew her hand from her husband's. "That was my friend Cheryl who gave it to me," Victoria explained. Jason, suddenly angered, exclaimed, "Why would Cheryl share her jewelry?" "Give it back to her. I'll buy you one." However, Victoria pleaded, "No, please don't." She clarified that her new partner had gifted her the bracelet, while she already possessed a similar one from a previous relationship. The woman conveyed something in her words, alarmed her husband, but he could not understand what. It marked the inaugural instance. The alarm bell resonated for him. But from that day forward, Edisile became more vigilant and attentive to his beloved. He became alarmed by everything. A sudden bruise on his buttock, a new thing, frequent gatherings with friends, and regular gym visits. Actually, a friend enlightened him about a program that allowed tracking a person's movements through their phone. After installing it, the man discovered that his spouse frequently ventured to places other than the fitness center. Barely does she pause on the map, and she promptly changes direction. This proved to be the final straw for Jason, prompting him to helping him to take matters into his own hands and follow his wife in person. As Victoria prepared for her workout once more, Jason swiftly trailed behind. A prearranged cab awaited him downstairs, summoned in advance for this purpose. "Follow that car. I'll pay extra," he instructed the driver, initiating the pursuit. Unaware of the surveillance, Victoria drove to the gym as usual. Upon arriving, she exited the cab and transitioned into another car. Jason was intimately familiar with the car. The vehicle belonged to Terry, a Jason's business associate. Unintentionally, Jason's hands tightened into fists. The couple was oblivious to him, their car positioned at a distance. "Let's follow them," Jason instructed the driver with a grim tone. He nodded in silence. Jason pondered where Terry might be taking his wife, perhaps to his residence or to some upscale, lavish hotel. Right to the unfolding scenes made him feel queasy, prompting him to open the window. His life was falling apart before his eyes. His mother's warnings about Victoria and everything else echoed in his mind, proving her right. She had cautioned Jason, who, blinded by love, had dismissed her warnings about regretting his marriage to Victoria. Terry's car smoothly entered the hotel parking lot. Jason settled the cab fare, released the driver, and discreetly trailed the couple. From a distance, peering through the panoramic windows, he observed his business partner confidently embracing Victoria around the waist and planting a kiss on her temple. The sight caused the man's cheekbones to crease. The lovers left. The deceived husband burst into the hall. Swiftly, he deposited a handful of bills on the front desk and asked about the room of the recently departed couple. Receptionist mumbled, "I can't say." The boy was about 25 years old. "Brians," Jason growled, forcefully pounding his fist on the countertop. The boy mumbled a response, from which Jason managed to discern a few numbers. Without hesitation, Jason hurried up the stairs to the hotel's second floor. The man banged hard on the door twice, and then again. His heart raced with increasing speed. Eventually, the door creaked open, revealing a startled and frightened Terry. Jason noticed Victoria standing behind him. But without hesitation, Jason lunged at Terry initiating a scuffle. Amidst Victoria's screams and tears, her lover struggled to fend off her enraged husband. Tears streaming down her cheeks, mascara smudged, and hair tousled. He felt a pang of pain. He got his way out of the hotel. He threw the receptionist a few more bills. But the young man, visibly terrified with pale skin and trembling hands, was so consumed by fear that he forgot to press the panic button. Jason was very lucky. The man couldn't recall his journey home that night, nor the amount of alcohol he consumed in an attempt to numb the pain. A drowsy babysitter awaited him, tasked with staying the night to care for his son. While collapsing on the floor like a sack, he quickly succumbed to sleep. He awoke the next day around lunchtime. The happy cries of the child made his head throb, and the aroma of freshly cooked soup turned his stomach. In the kitchen, the nanny confronted him, and Jason felt a wave of shame. But though the woman didn't reveal any judgment, summoning every ounce of strength, he expelled his wife from the house and initiated divorce proceedings. Victoria attempted to contest for custody of her son, but her spouse firmly asserted that the child would remain under his care, prompting her to withdraw. Jason losing two significant people simultaneously, the woman he loved and the partner with whom he had collaborated successfully for many years. For a while, this whole situation undermined him, but he was able to pull himself together and get out of this situation with dignity. A year later, Victoria replaced Harry with someone new, forsaking her former lover. Stranded without financial support, she drifted among friends for a while. Recent OMT. When she secured employment, she rented a modest apartment on the outskirts. The new life was unpleasant for her, as the years of marriage had accustomed her to luxury, affluence, and a lack of necessity to work. That's how it always happens. But what we have, what we don't keep. When we lose it, we cry. Thank you for listening to the story to the end. And if you like it, please support us with a like as well as subscribe to our channel. Write in the comments what you think about the story.